I can get your attention, we'll get started. Dr. Wallerstein?
We're ready to jump into the staff presentation on the proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Michael Kelly will give the presentation.
Good morning, Dr. Burke, members of the board.
Hey, that's good.
Jump ahead here. Before I start with the first slide, I just want to give a brief overview right from the transmittal letter, from Dr. Wallerstein's transmittal letter in the budget. This budget proposes $137 million in expenditures, $135 million in revenues. What you'll see compared to the current year budget is an increase in salaries and benefits costs primarily related to retirement. On the revenue side of things, we're including a 1.4% CPI fee adjustment, along with the second year of the cost recovery fee adjustment that the board approved last year. It was approved last year. The health and safety code requires that it be phased in over a 2-year period. So that's included in the budget. As Dr. Wallerstein mentioned in the admin committee, we're requesting a net additional 3 positions, which include 2 foster youth type internships, intern positions, and 1 assistant DEO in engineering and compliance. So that's in a nutshell what we're going to see here. The first slide here, I'd just like to start off to remind everybody, this is the general fund budget. The overall financial picture of South Coast Air Quality Management District includes the general fund budget in addition to multiple special revenue funds. You see these through board actions periodically. Just show on a pie chart here, the general fund expenditures are about 45% of the total expenditures of the district. The remaining 55% are from special revenue funds. Carl Moyer, Prop 1B, Clean Fuels Funds, things of that nature. Today we're going to be talking about the blue part of the chart, which is the general fund. That includes all the core processes, the core mission of the district, which includes compliance, monitoring, permits, policy, things of that nature. It also includes all of the administrative costs for these other special funds. These other special funds on the pie chart here, those are the actual program costs. So those are for the truck replacements, the marine vessel replacements, et cetera, et cetera. We don't include those in our general fund budget because they come to the board ad hoc, usually in very large dollar amounts. So just to put a band around the total financial picture. We usually show this chart to show the overall progress the district has made. This is a measurement of ozone levels over the last 60 years as compared to population increases. So you see population increases about 3-fold, while ozone levels show a 76% decrease. This is just to demonstrate that there's progress being made. Obviously, attending these board meetings, you hear that there's additional work to be done. Just since 1990, the population of the counties that comprise the majority of South Coast Air Quality Management District boundaries have increased about 26% in total. You see the larger increases in the inland counties as the population moves where the new housing is. The source of this is the California Department of Finance. General fund expenditures, so we generally look to see how are we comparing against other like agencies. So we looked at the last 10 years at general fund expenditures. We can get audited numbers very easily. See that the South Coast Air Quality Management District, 20% increase in general fund expenditures. Some of that's related to administrative costs from the Prop 1B program, Moyer, and some of the federal funding that the district received when ERA grants were coming out. Bay Area is double.
If I may interrupt.
Yes, Dr. Burke.
And I don't want to do this, but I feel impelled. Back up one more slide. At the percent of population increase from 1990, I think it would be appropriate to show what the total population is compared to the increase of population. Because the 13% in Los Angeles County can be as big as the 95% in Riverside.
You're correct, Dr.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I don't have the number of people in front of me here, but I think what you'd see is the increase is huge, but these other counties started with a much smaller base. So you could see an actual equal number of people into these counties. And I can ensure.
And if we don't know that, I think that's important for us to know. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll get that information. I'll make sure it's included in the May board meeting presentation, Dr. Burke. FTE count, so again, if we just look at the two other largest air pollution control districts in the state, you'll see that South Coast Air Quality Management District over the last 10 years have reduced FTE count, so number of employees, by 6%, roughly comparable to the Bay Area and much less than San Joaquin. Cost reduction efforts. So this is a list to just remind the governing board of the things, the actions that the board has taken over the last 5 to 10 years regarding cost reduction efforts. About 90% of the district's general fund budget is salary and employee benefits. So that's where you're generally going to see most of your cost reduction efforts. The remaining expenditures are bond payments, utilities, things that you can make some incremental cost savings, but not very material, not as much as what you can do with salaries and benefits. And a major portion of the salaries and benefits is retirement costs. The increases have been greater there than in any other area. So just as a reminder, the vacancy rate's been increased. It used to be about 4%. It's at 8%. It's been as high as 9% in the proposed budgets. The district paid off the headquarters building early, saving some interest costs and about $3 million a year from the general fund, a reduction in the general fund. The district deleted unfunded vacant positions back in 2010, 2012. On the retirement front, I'll start from the bottom and work up. Reduced earnable comp items for new employees. In 2006, the district took action to take away certain compensable items that were increasing the retirement contributions. Back since 1979, but more recently, 06, 12, 14, and ongoing, the district has reduced and is now eliminating the agency pickup of the employee shares of retirement contributions. That's been done incrementally through labor negotiations. And then in 2013, PEPRA kind of fell in everybody's lap. That significantly changed the retirement formulas for new employees starting after January 1, 2013, assuming they don't have reciprocity with other retirement systems. So I'll show a chart in a little bit that shows how many employees we have fall into that group in the last 2 years. So talking about retirement.
And what I would like, and what I would also like is can you back up one slide?
Sure, sure. Sorry, Dr. Burke. I'm trying to move through quick so I don't bore you here.
Yeah, no, hey, look, money never bores me. Money never sleeps. The number of deleted, unfunded vacant positions that was deleted in 2010 to 2012, I think that the board ought to have the number of positions, because we, at that time, indicated that if things improved, that we'd like to return those positions to the role. So we need to know what they are, how many they are, so that we can still consider that.
Yes, Dr. Burke, and the number's about 35. I'll provide some detail to the governing board so they can review that. I think
but you see, we have so many new members since that time that they need to know.
Yes, Dr. Burke. And the vacancy rate, if I can just add to that, the vacancy rate doesn't delete or unfund positions, but it really provides, it really creates about, it's gone from 4% to 8%. So even though the positions aren't deleted, the executive officer also has reduced ability to hire positions, not just because they're deleted, because there's not money in the budget available for them. So I can provide some information on that as well too.
Thank you.
On retirement plan investment, so this is really incidental to the district. We don't govern what SB-SARA does, but it definitely, the investment performance has an impact on the district, a significant impact. And you can see we're going back 11 years here. There's two striking years, I think, particularly 2008, 2009, where you see a investment rate of return of negative 26%. That's extraordinary because SB-SARA at that time assumed they would earn 8%. So if you lose 26%, you're really 34% short from where you thought you would be. And that is the cause, I'll show in a minute, where our contribution rates have gone. Even though the performance since that time has been pretty good, it takes years for those losses to flow through an asset allocation, an asset smoothing process, and then into the unfunded liability. So you're paying those losses off over about a 25-year period of time when you add it all up. If you look at these 11 years, though, SB-SARA, if you go on their website, will show that they've earned a little over 6% a weighted average over the last 10 years. But the 11th year was a pretty good performing year, and we happen to have it here, 16.94%. If you run just a simple average across, they're at about 7.9%. So including those bad years, I think those numbers look a little better than I think a lot of people would have expected back when we were down at the depths of the losses here. So this is really where the rubber meets the road. After that, those investment performance, this is how it affects us. And you can see losses that occurred in 08-09, you don't see really large increases until several years later. And these are our actual employer contribution rates. I apologize, these numbers are small, but I can show you in 08-09, the contribution rate was about 14%. And what's included in this proposed budget is about 30% for South Coast Air Quality Management District. And as sharp as this increase looks, there's an improvement in the out years in that our projections over the last 5 years have been steep increases going into the out years. And the current projections are a flattening of the contribution rate. So you never want to see a cost double and stay there, but it looks better than it did before, which was a doubling and then an additional increase. That's all going to be subject to the actual earnings of the retirement fund, though. The question a lot of people always ask is the funded ratio of a retirement plan. You can use that as a thumbnail, I think, to see how the plan is doing compared to other plans. You see SB Sarah, CalPERS, LaSera, OSER's a little bit of an exception there, in the high 70s, close to 80% funded ratio. That number is highly dependent, though, on the actuarial assumptions. If SB Sarah changes their actuarial assumption for investment returns, they lower it, the unfunded rate, the funded ratio can be reduced by about 3%. So again, though, 80%, I think you hear the question sometimes, what's a healthy funded ratio? 100% is probably what everybody would like to see. You hear 70, 80% as being reasonable, but this is where we're at today. Going back to employees, so just by hire date, what we're showing here are employees that were current employees that started before 2006, before there were any changes to the compensation levels and what was pensionable and what was not. It's a significant portion of the district. It's 65%. You can tell at the board meetings that there are a lot of employees who've been here a long time. They started fairly young. This number, I think if we go back 5 years, was probably closer to about 80%. And I think it's going to come down more drastically in the near future. If you look at the post-2013 employees, these are ones who started after January 1 of 2013. So about 28 months, and that's during a period where there was some reduced hiring. That's picking up now. But you see it's at 5%. I think by the end of the fiscal year 15-16, that number will be probably 10% to maybe even 15%. So now we're finally to the budget summary, which I described a little bit here. This is the last column. So this budget proposes costs, expenditures of about $137 million with revenues of $135 million, requiring the use of $2.2 million of prior year revenues that resides in unassigned or unreserved fund balance. The last two budgets that were proposed did not require the use of fund balance. Prior to that, there had been a 10-year gap where we did not have a balanced budget, and we're back to that this year, primarily, again, related to increased labor costs. Labor costs are up about $4 million, with a little more than half being related to SB Sarah's actuarial change. I'll get to a 5-year budget that shows that this is a short-term imbalance, and that we see balance ahead in the next 4 to 5 years. I think this slide people have seen probably multiple times, but I think it's an effective slide. This shows the inflation impact on SCAQMD budgets. So we take the general fund budget from 91-92, it was $113 million. You compare that to this year's requested or proposed budget of $137 million, that's a 21% increase. If you take that budget from 91-92 and you just add CPI to it, you would have a number that's up around 170, 175 million. So looking at it from a CPI or inflation adjusted basis, the district's general fund budget is 30% lower than it otherwise would be. And again, I think that's just a thumbnail test to see, how you're doing. I'm not sure what else you derive from that. And at the bottom of the chart, you'll show that the staffing level in 91-92 was 1,163 employees, where what's being requested is 803 employees. It's about a 30% decrease from funding levels at that time, so a significant decrease. Expenditures by activity, so where does the district spend their money? In the budget, we have expenditures sliced and diced a number of different ways, by office, by work program, by goal. This shows by activity, so you see about 2/3 of the district's expenditures are related to permit processing, inspections, air monitoring, analysis, rulemaking, things of that nature. Another significant portion spent on what we're calling advanced technology, so that's mobile source, Moyer, clean fuels, things of that nature. Revenue comparison. So what you see here from...
Yes. I'm sorry. Dr. Wallerstein?
Yes.
I can't see you, but I know you're there. If in fact we would want to start, if the board would decide to start on a wireless monitoring program for various installations, where would that fall in this pie chart?
I think what part of it would be in our laboratory monitoring group is where most of that work would be done. Same place that we're doing the testing of the devices and the outside contractor studies looking at fence line monitoring at the refineries and other large industrial facilities.
The orange.
Yeah, I need new glasses.
It's
Okay.
7.5.
Okay, thank you.
So we've talked a little about expenditures. Now we're looking at revenue comparison. Again, the budget's 165 pages. There's a significant amount of detail, so we're boiling this down for you, and then we're happy to answer some more specific questions. There'll be some more slides on fees here in the next couple minutes. What you see is stationary sources, which makes up the bulk of the revenues to the general fund. We have a slight increase there, and primarily, again, that's related to a 1.4% CPI fee increase, along with the second year of the 6% fee increase that was approved last year. So 3% was adopted in the fee rule last year, and another 3% that's in the fee rule will be implemented this year. Pretty flat on the mobile source transportation side, and on others a rather large revenue source, so that's penalties and settlements, that's federal grants, things of that nature. So we're looking pretty flat except for the CPI fee increases. Stationary source fee revenue, similar chart to what the district's general fund budget. Not surprisingly, if 80% of revenues come from stationary sources, and 60 to 70% of the activities are related to activities that are paid by stationary source fee. You'll see that the fees over the last 24, 25 years are up 22%, but when inflation adjusted are down 28%. If you just took a simple average over how much that fee revenue has gone up, it's just under 1% per year on average.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that
Mike,
just,
I have a question.
is that just the permit fees, or is that fines and penalties as well?
That's stationary source fees, not including fines and penalties, so that is permit processing fee, the annual operating fee, and emissions fee.
Okay, will you let me know where the fines and penalties
Yes.
show up?
It's actually probably not, you probably won't see it much in detail, but I can tell you the district budget's $5 million for penalties and settlements. I think the average over the last 10 years has been about $8 million. The district's not increased the budget level because in one year the number might be $4 million. They're typically considered more one-time revenues that aren't used to fund ongoing operations. So we maintain that budget level at $5 million, but the average has been about 8.5 over the last 10 years.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Dr. Parker?
Mike,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go.
I was at the prior slide where it showed the adopted budget, 132 million, but the amended budget was 139. Where did we get the additional 7?
So Dr.
from?
Parker,
I see that other revenue itself was went up approximately $5 million, and so how did that happen?
Yes, Dr. Parker. So these are some of the board letters that you see throughout the year, request appropriations, and generally have revenues associated with them as well. So you'll see board letters related to some EPA grants where we don't know the specific amount of the grant as of today. We include the salaries and benefits, and we assume we'll receive the revenue for those, but we'll come back to the board with services and supply costs, things of that nature, and we'll ask for appropriation budget, so expenditure budget, and we'll also add money to the revenue budget to cover those expenditures. So that's a normal amount that you'll see. In addition, if there are one-time revenues that are being requested to be used to purchase vehicles, things of that nature, that also increases the revenue budget as well. So these are all done through specific board action throughout the year.
Okay.
I have a question. Oh, were you through, Dr.
Yes,
Parker?
yes, I was.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
On this stationary source fee revenue, I think it would be important to have a slide in there for all those who are new to the board to know that the permit process runs at a loss. It is not revenue neutral. And so stationary fee source, as it goes up, it does not go up in line with the cost of processing permits.
We'll include a slide, Dr. Burke, and I can add a little bit of information. So the goal of the fee increase that was requested and approved last year was to get us closer to cost recovery. We're still in general about $2 million short on that cost recovery, and the difference there is primarily funded through penalties. But yes, Dr. Burke, I'll definitely add a slide for the board presentation.
See, you know, it just never made sense to me that an agency which is responsibility is to issue permits doesn't issue them at a cost neutral perspective, because it's like you said, if we go a year without penalty revenue, we got a real problem. So I think all the board members should understand that at some time, those people who need permits need to pay for them. Not for part of it, but for the permit. I'm finished.
This slide here is the budget forecast. It's a 5-year budget forecast. So what we do is we show you the estimate for 14-15. We show you what's being proposed for 15-16. And then what we do is we perform analysis going out 4 years. I just want to assure everybody, we don't go to the 5th year and say we need it to be balanced or look a certain way and then work our way backwards. It'd be easier if we did it that way, but we don't. So we go through and we look at the costs, the current costs. We look at known cost increases related to labor costs. We include contribution rate increases as projected by SB We look at big infrastructure items that may become necessary over that period as well, because they're generally significant in the aging building here. On the revenue side of things, we generally just take a CPI fee increase assumption and go forward from there. So what you'll see here going out on a 5-year basis is that for the next 3 years, we're using what I'll call prior year revenues, unassigned, unreserved fund balance. And what I mean by that is prior year revenues, and in 13-14 were greater than expected. That difference falls into the unreserved or unassigned fund balance, and that's what we're using here to balance 15-16, 16-17, 17-18. What you'll see here is the unreserved fund balance and the percentage that is of revenue. So the governing board's policy has said to not go below 20% of general fund revenue, and as we carry this out 4 to 5 years, you'll see we get right around 21, 22%. I think this is usually the point where when I speak with Dr. Wallerstein, he reminds me, and accurately reminds me, that if subvention funds were pulled from the state, that's $4 million, and that would significantly change this projection here. If federal funding were to be reduced from grants that we generally get regularly, such as Section 105, there's another $6 million, $5 million. So we don't assume those things are going to happen going out, but we're cognizant of them being there. So what this is to demonstrate to the governing board is, yes, we're using prior year revenues to fund 15-16, and that's what we think is going to happen for the next 2 years. This is $800,000. We'll see if we can get balance there. But what it demonstrates is that this year's budget does not project to put us in a position where we're out of balance with the board's fund balance policy. And I think it is a fair projection going out, subject to change, again, regarding CPI fee increases and additional costs that could come in to play. And we're projecting staffing levels at the same all the way across, and we're assuming an 8% vacancy rate all the way across as well. So fee adjustments, straight right to the point, automatic increase in fees pursuant to Rule 320 of 1.4%. 1.4% is the California CPI, which is what the Health and Safety Code tells us to use. It's not LA, all urban consumers. And I think the key is that it's a consistent CPI number that you use, and it's been consistent for decades. Also is the second year phase-in of an additional 3% for permit processing and annual operating fees. I'll show you what that looks like for potential fee payers here in the next slide. So this is a fee impact example for a facility that already has a permit, and we've given just a couple equipment type examples from our schedule. So if you look at a dry cleaning facility with a piece of dry cleaning equipment, there's a 1.4% CPI fee on their annual operating and their emissions flat fee. There's also the 3% on their annual operating fee. So what you see is that their total fee will go up by $14.74, which is the cumulative total. So currently on an annual basis, you'd be paying the district $451, and now you would be paying about $465. You can see as the type of equipment becomes larger and more complicated, the number goes up proportionately, but the percents are the same. We make a note at the bottom just to put into some kind of perspective. 70% of fee payers have only one permit, not multiple permits. Fee impact example for new permits. So that was for somebody who already had a permit that pays ongoing fees. This is for somebody who comes into the district, wishes to obtain a permit. In this example, there's a service station storage and dispensing equipment. The current fee is almost $1,500, and this 4.4 fee increase would bring it up by about $65. Again, as the equipment becomes more complicated and larger, you'll see those are also increased, larger dollar, but same percentage.
Michael, on
Yes,
filling
Maria.
stations, I keep forgetting to ask this question, on their fees, is that per pumping station at a filling station, or is that for the whole facility?
So this example, I think I'll let Mosin get into the detail, but it's per go ahead, Mosin. I think you're better
It's
answering
by
the question.
dispenser, which can have multiple nozzles on it.
Well, normally two.
Right.
So if they got a 9 Highland, it's 9 times this?
No. These fees are for, we issue a single permit for the whole station.
For the whole, that's what I'm asking.
So, yeah, but I thought you meant in terms of how do we evaluate the numbers. But there's only one permit issued for the full,
Whether they have one pump or 9 of them, it's the
or
same
permit to
problem.
construct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Give an idea. This chart here gives you an idea of what's going on at the other large air pollution control districts. Again, just as a thumbnail, South Coast 1.4% to 4.4% proposed fee increase. Bay Area's got a blended average of 6.4%. It's dependent on specific fee, but this gives you an idea. Sacramento Metro was doing a 4 to 5 year cost recovery effort at 7.4% per year, so significant fee increase. San Joaquin 4.8%. San Diego County is not doing a fee increase this year, as we understand. Some of our key dates, so this just ties back to the budget process in general. We strive to make the budget process as open as available to members of the public, to affected facilities, and this just shows some of the things that occur leading up to this workshop, and then moving on to the public hearing and hopefully budget approval by the board at the May meeting. I mentioned that this afternoon at 1 o'clock there's a public workshop. Health and Safety Code requires that we notify every facility of this public workshop. We post it online, it's in the newspapers, we send you a letter to your facility. We generally don't get a lot of response, anywhere from 1 to 4 participants. The recommendations and comments provided by the public and by the budget advisory are provided to the board on April 15th. So you should get an idea of what the affected community has to say about this budget. And I would assume from those comments and recommendations, you may hear the same thing at the governing board meeting in May. So that's to prepare for that. I just on our board letter, As part of our budget, we usually do some cleanup things as well. So I just wanted to say this so there's no surprises. On our budget board letter, there's 10 items. The first 6 are specifically related to the budget. These 3 bullet points at the bottom are things that we normally include in that letter. And these are cleanup items that set aside potential one-time monies that we think that we're going to receive this year that set us up for the budget next year and going forward. This will be the 3rd year that we've requested to transfer some one-time revenues from the general fund to the infrastructure improvement fund. That's for large-scale infrastructure projects. That has included a phone system, audiovisual upgrade, and large upgrades to the some of the infrastructure at the building. I'm not even sure what some of the equipment does, but it's very expensive. And we're requesting those transfers. These projects will come back to the board before an expenditure happens. It just sets the money aside in the infrastructure improvement fund. We're requesting authority to purchase 19 vehicles. If we purchase them using this year's revenue, we don't have to do it in next year's budget, and we can get these vehicles online with some of the new inspectors that are coming on board. So this is for the purchase of 18. They'll generally be Honda Civic CNG sedans and 1 CNG van to replace the aging fleet. We surplused about 30 vehicles this year, so we're requesting 19 total to replace those. In addition, this is an item that in the time I've been here, compensation adjustments have been rare because we haven't done them. So there is a board resolution from 2007 that requires that the hearing board members receive the same compensation increase as board assistant board consultants. That number, as you may recall from the last board meeting, was a 2% compensation increase effective January 1 of 2015, a 1.5% increase this coming January, and another 1.5% increase. Certainly the board could revise that resolution if necessary. It's from 2007. The cost would be about $3,000 going back to January, and on an annual basis would be about $7,000 to $10,000 for the hearing board members. So you'll see that on the budget board letter as well.
You done, Mike?
Yes.
I'd like to mention that board member Lou has raised to me the issue about whether or not we're fully recovering costs for quarterly inspections of chrome plating shops, and it's something I'm going to further discuss with Mike and Mosen, and so we'll be prepared on May 1st to respond to that question.
I'd be happy again to answer any questions on the presentation or on the budget. I know it's 165 pages. If any other questions come up between now and the governing board meeting, we're available to answer. We'd be happy to discuss.
Have we ever considered Mr. Cacciotti's suggestion of electric bikes for the inspectors?
Or board members?
Transit passes. Chairman, I have a question.
Okay, I was just wondering.
I have a question.
Mr. Cacciotti, you had a question?
I did, Mr. Chair. Just on the vehicles, I know we purchased you said 18 to 19 Honda Civics possibly. Is it possible we may have a discussion, maybe looking instead of so many CNG, maybe transitioning to some electric, plug-in hybrid electrics or all electric, as more and more models come out, whether it's Nissan Leaf, the Golf, the Kia, or like a plug-in like some of the Chevy Volts, or with all the new technology coming in next year. I just got the i3 extended range, and it's incredible. So I'm maybe thinking we could look at maybe, instead of all CNG, diversify a little bit.
Be happy to look at that and look at what the emissions would likely be given the duty cycle that our inspectors would entail relative to vehicle use.
What kind of range you getting with your new car?
You know, the i3, I've only, in 2.5 months, only used like not even a quarter of a tank of gas. Got a 2-gallon tank. 99% of the trips have been, it goes about 85, 87 miles all electric. So it's incredible. Just a little bit of the gas.
Okay. Are there any further questions by any of the board members for Mr. Kelly?
I have a question, Chairman Burke. This is Judy.
Surely.
I don't know if you can see me. Can you see me?
You can see it.
I'm telling you, you're like a microscopic dot at the end.
Okay, the microscope,
Dot
Dot is
requested.
going to speak now. We mentioned that permit fees and the emission fees that we collect don't cover the cost of that. Is that because we're not charging enough in fees, or is that because they don't pay and we don't go after to collect? What is the reason for that?
We don't charge, the fees that we charge don't fully cover the cost that it takes to process that work. Somebody could argue, well, then it costs too much to process the work, but it's not related to non-collectability issues.
Could you mention any differential that exists between small businesses and other businesses, Mike?
As far as these fees,
Discounts.
The discounts?
I don't have a detail in front. Oh, as far as, would you like to talk most on the small business fee discount?
The small businesses get a 50% discount on all their permits, so if they qualify as a small business, the regular cost of permitting probably is the same for us to process, but there is a 50% discount in the fees that they pay for that permit.
Okay, thank
If
you.
I could mention, when we did last year's increase to the various permit-related fees, it was initially anticipated that that would bring us to a revenue-neutral situation, but subsequently, retirement costs went up more than we had realized at the time. So that increase didn't turn out to quite accomplish what we hoped it would.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question as well. Another microscopic dot over here.
Yeah, right, you're even smaller than Judy.
Anytime someone calls me small, I'm happy. The bottom of page 6,
Greg, can you put the slides?
line 2, not page 6 on your
Oh.
presentation, on the actual document. The very last paragraph under pollution sources. I'm thinking back to the board meeting 2 ago where we talked about taking a different position with the federal government and arguing how much we can actually control, what the ambient levels are. And here we use the word small. Nature itself causes a small portion of the emissions. And I'm wondering if we just deleted the word small to help make our point that we have control over what we have control of and we really shouldn't be held responsible for the things that we don't have control of.
Would it be acceptable if we added something that said specifically that this is referring to like biogenic emissions? And so, but we can certainly rework this to make the point the federal government has a share and that the majority of emissions are outside of this board's control.
Same with cars.
Yeah, I think it's just important that we continue to drive that message.
Happy to do that.
We've been preaching that 12 years I've been on this board. To deaf ears, I might add.
Any other further comments from board members? Well, is there any public comments at the district office?
None that I see, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mayor Yates. There's definitely none here. We've considered ours. Any at your location, Mr. Caccioti?
No, Mr. Chair, just me.
Okay, then this will conclude the special board meeting of the South Coast Air Quality District's Budget Committee.
What barbecue?
Yeah, 43 barbecue park. Grab 6 different meats tomorrow, starting 11 to 4, turn in every hour.